Summary of the Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich. At the start of the book, Joe and his father Basil, who works as a tribal judge, are pulling weeds from around their house's base. Sometime later, they find out that Joe's mom, Geraldine, still hasn't come home. Basil and Joe choose to go find her. The woman speeds past them on the highway on her way back to the house. The happy Joe and Basil go home, but Geraldine is still sitting in her car, covered in blood and vomit and smells like gasoline. Basil knows right away that something is wrong and takes Geraldine and Joe to the hospital. While he is at the hospital, Joe slowly learns that Geraldine was raped brutally. The cops talk to Geraldine and Basil, and before Geraldine, Joe, and Basil go home, Geraldine has surgery. The next week, Geraldine hides in her bed all day because she is afraid to go outside. Joe and Basil read to her and bring her food that Joe's Aunt Clemence has made. It's strange that Geraldine won't tell Basil or the police anything about the rape or the person who did it, even though it looks like she knows who he is. While Geraldine fights to heal physically and mentally while in bed, Joe, who is frustrated that the case isn't moving forward, hangs out with his friends Cappy, Zach, and Angus. Joe goes to Cappy's house one night to help Randall, Cappy's brother, run his sweat lodge. The men inside sing old songs while Joe and Cappy take care of the fire. After telling Joe that he saw a ghost standing over him in the fire, Randall warns Joe to be careful. The following week, Joe's mom is still on edge at home. When Basil gets home from work, he brings home case files that he thinks might help with Geraldine's case. He and Joe look through the files together. One of these cases is about Betty Wishcob adopting Linda Lark. This case is important to Basil. Joe, Cappy, Zach, and Angus try to look into the case when they have free time. They check out the roundhouse on the land for proof. The person who attacked Geraldine used a gas can to douse her in gasoline. Joe finds the gas can, and Angus finds a pack of Ham's beers. Even though the boys think the beers might be proof, they drink them. When Joe gets home, he listens in on Basil and Joe's Uncle Edward as they talk about how Father Travis, the new Catholic priest in town, might have been the one who did it. As Joe goes to sleep that night, he suddenly remembers that Geraldine had gotten a call the day of her attack and gone to her office to look for a file as the tribe enrollment expert. It looks a lot like the ghost Randall saw in the sweat lodge, and Joe sees it outside his window as he falls asleep. Joe knows right away that this is a ghost. The next day, he asks Basil about it, and Basil says it might be a spirit from his future. Joe and his friends go to Mass to find out more about Father Travis. The trip turns into a pursuit of clues, and the boys end up spying on Father Travis at his house. They can see that Father Travis's private parts are so badly scarred that he could not have raped Geraldine. The boys are caught watching by Father Travis, who threatens them before letting them go. Joe learns that Basil is also looking into a different suspect. Basil then takes Joe with him to talk to Linda Lark. Linda tells them about her life and how her mother, Grace Lark, left her as a baby because of a birth flaw and Betty Wishcob raised her. After many years, Grace Lark got in touch with Linda again to try to get her to give her kidney to Lyndon, Linda's twin brother. Linda gave the money even though she hated Lyndon and thought he was mean. Joe starts to understand that his dad thinks Lyndon Lark is the one who raped her. After this talk with Linda, Joe finds a doll in the lake on the reservation one day. When Joe takes off the boat's head to empty the extra water, he finds $40,000 inside. He gives his Aunt Sonia the money. She works at the gas station with Joe's Uncle Whitey. He has to pay for college, so Sonia helps him put the money in several bank accounts. They then bury the passbooks in the woods. After that, Sonia offers Joe a job at the gas station, which he takes right away because he really likes Sonia and wants to be close to her. That night, when Joe gets home, Basil is talking to an FBI agent. Joe tells both of them about the gas can and beer that he and his friends found. Joe then tells them that Geraldine went to get a file from her office in the afternoon of the rape because he felt bad about hiding the money. When Basil and Joe ask her about the file, Geraldine finally breaks down and tells them everything that happened the night she was raped, leaving out the name of the person who did it. A caller asked about a file, and Geraldine was taken from her office and raped. She was then taken to the roundhouse, where her attacker was holding Mela Wolfskin and her baby hostage. The person who attacked Mela asked where the money was and said they would kill her and Geraldine by putting gasoline on them and setting them on fire. Geraldine got away and ran to her car. Geraldine's story is told, and then Basil takes her to a mental hospital to rest. Joe lives with Whitey and Sonia and works at the gas station every day with them. Every day, he changes tires and picks up trash in the yard. Sonia wears new diamond earrings to work one day, which makes Whitey think that Sonia is cheating on him. As Joe pumps gas for a white man at the gas station, he is shocked to see that it is Lyndon Lark. On that night, Whitey beats Sonia because he thinks she cheated on him, and Joe, who loves Sonia, tries to protect her. To keep them safe, Sonia locks them in the bedroom. The next morning, Joe quits his job at the gas station and goes to live with Clements. Joe sleeps in his grandpa Musham's room while he is at Clements's house. In his sleep, Musham tells a story about Wendigo justice, which means that he has to kill a Wendigo. In Chippewa culture, a Wendigo is someone who eats people. The next day, Basil picks up Joe after coming back from the hospital with Geraldine. Joe takes Cappy, Angus, and Zach to the lake behind the church. They meet the church's youth group, and Cappy falls in love with Zelia, a young missionary from Montana. 2 days in a row, the boys go to youth group so that Cappy can spend time with them. That night, when Joe got home, he asked Basil again who raped Geraldine, but Basil wouldn't tell him. The next day, Joe and his friends see Mela's car being towed out of the lake by a search. Joe sees the same fabric in the back of the car that was used to dress the doll he found in the lake. He knows that Mela's doll and money were there. When Joe asks Basil again who raped Geraldine, Basil shows him a picture of Lyndon Lark, which proves Joe's thoughts. Basil, however, says that the case against Lyndon is weak because they don't know where the crime happened and can't prove that it happened in the right place. It was found at a Goodwill by Basil, and the governor of South Dakota, Curtis Yelto, tried to adopt the child. Mela worked for Yelto when she was in high school. Geraldine gives the police Mela's file because she is sure the child is safe. The file shows that Curtis Yelto is the child's father and that Mela and Curtis had an affair when Mela was younger. Basil and Geraldine work on the case in Bismarck, while Joe stays with Clements once more. As he sleeps in Musham's room, Musham tells him another story about Nana Push and Aki, who built the roundhouse on the reservation as a tribute to the buffalo. After a few days, Sonia shows up at Clements's house, and Musham tries to get Joe to leave quickly. Sonia wants to give Musham a lap dance for his birthday, but Joe won't go. He tells Sonia that if she doesn't let him stay, he will tell Whitey about the doll money Sonia has been keeping from him. When Sonia is done dancing for them, she yells at Joe that he's just like other men who are bad to women. Cappy tells Joe that he and Zelia had sex in the graveyard on the night of Musham's birthday. Joe goes to Cappy's house. Cappy is very sad now that Zelia has gone back to Montana. When Joe gets home, he finds out that Lyndon Lark was not charged with his crime because there wasn't enough proof. The girl screams. Joe yells at his dad, telling him that as a tribe judge, he doesn't have any power. Later that same night, Basil shows Joe all the law problems he has to deal with as a tribe judge and says that he is fighting these wrongs for future generations. Clements tells Joe the next day that Sonia left Whitey. Sonia hid the passbooks, and when Joe and Cappy find them, they find that Sonia left Joe $10,000 of the doll money and ran away with the rest. Basil and Joe take Geraldine food shopping since Lyndon is free and she doesn't feel safe outside of her home. They attack Lyndon Lark one day when they see him in the grocery store lane. He gets away with it, but Basil has a heart attack in the food shop. Geraldine and Joe stay with Basil at the hospital in Fargo for a few days after he is taken there. As Basil sleeps, Joe and Geraldine are at a diner, and Geraldine makes it sound like she is going to kill Lyndon Lark. So, Joe decides to kill his mother himself because he thinks Lyndon will do it if she tries. Joe now has a clear goal: to kill Lyndon. He tells Cappy what he plans to do. Joe says no to Cappy's offers to help because he doesn't want to be linked to the crime, but Cappy insists on teaching him how to shoot his dad's gun. Joe is a bad shot, even though he practices a lot. The boys know Lyndon likes to golf, so they plan to kill him one day while he's playing. The view from the overlook behind Cappy's house is good, so they know where Lyndon is. Next, Joe plans to meet Linda during her lunch break and asks her about Lyndon's golfing habits. Linda tells him that Lyndon always plays very early in the morning. Joe is told by Cappy to steal Joe's gun at the summer powwow that weekend. While the rituals are going on, Joe leaves and goes to Cappy's house to get the gun. He breaks glass and unplugs the TV to make it look like someone else did the robbery. From the hill above the golf course, Joe hides the gun behind an oak tree. After that, Joe tells Cappy very clearly that he will carry out the rest of the plan by himself. When Cappy says that he wants to help Joe settle his bad aim, Joe agrees, but he plans to keep his secret and not tell Cappy when he is going to the overlook. Every day for the next week, Joe goes to the lookout and waits for Lyndon. Lyndon shows up on Thursday, and Joe walks down the hill with the gun to get ready for his shot. Joe fails to do his job and shoots Lyndon in the gut. He then freezes. As soon as Joe is done, Cappy appears behind him, takes the gun from him, and kills Lyndon. Cappy and Joe run away, putting the gun under Linda's porch and drinking at Whitey's for the rest of the day. Whitey thinks they killed someone and tells them to give him their shirts to help their story. Joe asks Cappy how he knew Joe would be at the lookout. Cappy replies that he goes there every day just in case. Basil asks Joe if he knows anything about Lyndon's death when he gets home that night. Joe says he doesn't believe it. Joe goes to Linda's house the next day because he is afraid that the police will find the gun. She lets him in and tells Joe that she knows he used what she told him about Lyndon's playing to help the person who killed Lyndon. Joe asks Linda why Lyndon raped Geraldine. Linda says that Lyndon was jealous of Mela and wanted her to run away with him using the money Curtis Yelto gave her to keep quiet about the fact that he was the father of her child. Linda tells Joe that she believes Lyndon was harboring a monster. Joe starts to worry that he too has a monster inside him because he keeps having bad dreams about the crime he did. Linda finally tells Joe that she found the gun under her porch, took it apart, and threw it into the Missouri River. In the following week, Joe talks to Bugger Poirier, who tells him that he discovered Mela's body at the building site close to the reservation. Cappy gets a letter from Zelia's parents telling him not to talk to Zelia ever again. This makes Cappy decide to drive to Montana to talk to her. Mike, Angus, and Joe all go with him. The boys buy liquor and drink it while going fast on the highway. When the car goes off the road and flips, Joe is asleep in the back. The crash hurts Zach and Angus very badly, but Joe is fine. He looks all over for Cappy, hoping that he has already left to get help. Then Joe walks into the grass and finds Cappy's dead body. It doesn't matter that a police officer who looks just like the ghost Joe saw at his window tells him to let go. Joe still holds Cappy. Joe is taken to the police station, where Basil and Geraldine pick him up. They get back to the reservation in silence.
About the author. Louise Erdrich was born in 1954 in Little Falls, Minnesota. Erdrich's German-American father liked to read stories to his kids. She would later say that this was one of the main things that inspired her to become a writer. Erdrich's mother was a member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians and is where her Chippewa background comes from. In the 1970s, Erdrich went to Dartmouth College and met her future husband, the writer Michael Doris. They got married in 1981 and had 6 kids together before splitting up in 1995. Erdrich won the National Book Award and has written 15 novels and many other books.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.